Yeah, we have just gone live. So, good evening and welcome to all of you to this last session of Chittaramala, the short film festival curated by Neepa Majumdar and Geeta Vishwanath. It's been a wonderful set of discussions that we have been having for the past 3 weeks. And virtually everyone who has watched the films, have been raving about the selections. So in that sense, that we could all watch these films and talk about them on this forum has indeed been very, very gratifying. Um, in the beginning, on the first day, I had mentioned that I became associated with this short film festival not just through talking films online, but I had a conversation with Geeta, and I said that I would like to sponsor a part of the festival, at least the Zoom part of it, because November also happens to be the month where every year we organize a small cultural event at home in memory of my father. This year, because we could not host the cultural event, we have had plays on several locations. Tarakeshwar has directed plays earlier. Swaralipi Nandi came over for a discussion of an Assamese film some 3 years ago. So in that sense, Padikal sir has been one of those who has come and encouraged us, on many of these occasions every year. That's since that could not happen in the way we have been conducting it in the last few years. I asked Geeta if I could become associated with this festival and therefore, memorialize my father. So, without taking too much of your time, I would like to, just remember him with a few words. KV Subbarao, as he was known to most, was Appa to his daughters and Subbarna to his close friends and relatives. I want to memorialize here all that he likes so that through his likes you may get to know him better. His father and forefathers came from a small village which is called Kanakpura today. It used to be a village earlier. Coming from that village, my father secured his postgraduate degree in history and an additional degree in law. He fondly used to relate anecdotes of being taught by the greats of the Kannada literary world, such as Kuvempu, during his college days in Mysore University. He began his career as a teacher in National High School, Bangalore, though it was a short stint. There's some echo that is coming, I think. Uh, is there an echo only for me, or
There
No,
is.
it's for us. I think if everybody doesn't mute themselves, this is going to
right?
be a problem.
Yeah. Request all of you to please mute yourselves. I can't make out who's okay. Yeah, I think it's Padikal sir. Yes. Yeah. Um, so though it was a short stint as a teacher, a high school teacher, it seemed to be his true vocation. And to us, his daughters, he was more of a patient teacher than a disciplinarian father. Though he could not continue in the teaching line, he instilled in us such a love for the profession that we both became part of the academic profession. A tremendous source of delight to him on any occasion was when a former student of his came up to him years later to pay respects, as his teacher. He always had these endless stories that he would relate to us about his rapport with his students and colleagues. Another great love of my father was literature. He enjoyed reading, and it was easy to give him a birthday gift because his face would light up if we presented him with a book. As a school-going child, he gave me several literary classics to read, borrowed from a library near our house. And sometimes he would tell me that he would ask me questions from the book, which would make me read them grudgingly. Till the end of his life, he loved to read everything that I wrote, whether it was seminar papers, newspaper articles, or even an important official letter. Um, he also saw himself as a rasika of literature. During the 1970s and 80s, he, along with a number of his enthusiastic friends and relatives, formed a goshti, a kind of collective, where a famous literature or person from the Kannada cultural sphere came to address the goshti periodically. From famous poets and literatures like Gopal Krishna Adiga, Chandrasekhar Kambara, many well-known people from the world of Kannada culture came to the Goshti, and pleasant memories of the Goshti were strongly entrenched in my father's mind. In later years, he cultivated the practice of writing letters to the authors of the books he read, expressing his opinions about them. And he would eagerly discuss the books that he read with his circle of literature oriented friends. He also loved to travel, had an excellent memory for places and roads. He told me that just before his death, he told me that Kuppalli, the birthplace of Kuvempu, would be the place he would like to visit, but unfortunately, that was not to be. He worked for nearly 40 years in coffee board. Gentle, that is the first word that comes to mind when one thinks of him. He would hate to hurt anyone, and though many of us hurt him knowingly or unknowingly, he had rarely a harsh word for anybody, though he had some very idiosyncratic views and opinions about people and things. Um, when we brought to his attention something that we perceived as unfair or unjust, he would just gently wave his hand and click his tongue and say, "It's all right." So he had great equanimity, poise, and a wonderful sense of humor. So this is a kind of short introduction that I would like to give before we go on. It's as I said, every year on this occasion, because he loved to have people around. We used to organize this kind of get together and cultural event. This year it's been different, and I think it's still going on is such a wonderful thing. So thank you all. Thanks for being part of this important occasion for me. I now request Neepa to take over from here. Thank you all for listening to this short introduction. It will be Chittaramala and the discussion on the films from here. Over to you, Neepa.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your father's life with us. So I'm going to share my screen, and today I will try to show some clips. I took courage from Geeta doing it last week. Why is it not letting me optimize screen share for video clip? It's not letting me click on that.
Yeah, so don't optimize the screen, Neepa. Just go directly to share screen.
Okay.
Don't optimize the Zoom screen. It won't let you to.
Okay.
So just go to click on the green share screen, and
Okay.
then whichever window is open that you want to share, you can go directly to that.
Okay, it's just that it will it won't
Yeah.
share my, it won't
Yeah.
the
So
video clip won't play well.
you can enable sound when you share screen. You can just enable sound
Yeah.
from the computer. Yeah, so this should be fine.
Yeah, I think the clip won't show well, but I'll still do it. I just wanted to start with a background on Julie Dash. We watched her 1982 film Illusions, and I'm going to start with her film. Um, and she is part of a movement that is now known as the LA Rebellion. When I was a PhD student, we used to call it the LA School of Black Filmmakers. But in the past, maybe 5 years or so, there was a retrospective and a restoration of their work, and they were kind of renamed the LA Rebellion. So I thought it would be helpful to know that Julie Dash is a sort of like the second, not second generation, but second decade of the LA school. So these are filmmakers who were students at UCLA's film school in the late 60s and 70s. And there's a lot one can say about them. All I want to mention is that they were very much in tune with international global South cinema that was non-commercial and also non-art. So this is very much in alignment with third cinema, which I'll say a little bit more about. But the first African Film Festival in the US was held at UCLA in 1970. The 70s was a period of the Black Arts movement. So it was a very vibrant cultural and revolutionary period. There are all kinds of other aspects to the late 60s that you all may know of, such as the anti-war movement, the Vietnam War, and several assassinations in the US of Martin Luther King Jr., and then, of course, um, Robert Kennedy, the brother of Kennedy, and of course, you know, there were all sorts of it's sort of the uh, aftermath of the civil rights movement that the UCLA Film School becomes this vibrant place. It's a little bit late compared to the other movements, but it becomes a vibrant place for the expression of Black cinema. And I've put down the names of some other Black filmmakers from this LA Rebellion school, and I would highly recommend, especially the work of Charles Burnett and Haile Garima. I also highly recommend um, the film that Julie Dash is best known for, which is Daughters of the Dust. It's a very different film from Illusions in the sense that she was given a good budget, but still a very low budget by Hollywood standards. And she made a film that's one of the hallmarks of Black cinema today. So just to quickly let me just go to the third cinema. You all know, maybe. I just want to quickly go over it. The term comes from the 1969, published in 1969, manifesto by Solanas and Gettino called Toward a Third Cinema. And just very briefly, third cinema is basically one that is neither commercial nor a film festival circuit type of film, but is the type of film that is made from and for a very specific local community. Now, as a byproduct of that, such films might get picked up by film festivals, might become celebrated, might become canonical films, but in their origins, they usually are films that are low budget, that are by and for a community. So as far as the LA Rebellion filmmakers, now Julie Dash is from the late 70s UCLA student, but the other names that I gave you were from the earlier part. So in a way, she's second generation, although generation is the wrong term, second cohort maybe. So they all reject classical Hollywood style. They are especially opposed to the dominant sort of representation of Black Americans in Hollywood cinema, which is in blaxploitation cinema. So they're opposed to that. They're generally opposed to entertainment. And their interest is in fostering action and fostering new ways of seeing the world, which of course includes creating a new language of cinema. They often draw on a community of non-professional actors. In this film, I should mention that they all performed many roles in each other's films. So many of the actors are actors who, with a lot of experience, but they began in other student films. So they are also kind of student actors, but they also drew on a lot of non-professional actors. And then they tended to screen their films certainly in the university, but also in churches and community centers. So they very knowingly and intentionally kept themselves outside the production, distribution, and exhibition structures of Hollywood at that time and in the early years of the LA rebellion movement. Somebody like Haile Garima has continued to work outside these structures. However, others, when they've been invited into the Hollywood structure, have joined in, such as Julie Dash, and to go back, such as Charles Burnett. Haile Garima is the one who hasn't. Um, but even when they're within Hollywood, you can see the difference and you can see a trace of this sort of uh, thinking about what their cinema is all about. So I just want to start by talking about Illusions. And I think you all watched it. It is a many-layered film. It is about voice, voice in the sense of literally, we have the voice dubbing of this white actress by the black singer. So the taking away of black voices, the appropriation of black culture. We know that in the history of, say, somebody like pop music and rock music, there are enough stories of that. Um, but it's also voice in the industry. It's also a feminist film. It's not just about black expression. It's also about feminist expression. And so it's a very self-reflexive film. There's a lot in the film that is also about Julie Dash herself as a filmmaker and looking ahead as a filmmaker in Hollywood. Um, the film is set during World War II. It has a fantastical element, which is the very idea that a woman, let alone a woman of color, is in a role of producer. Considering what we know about Hollywood today, during the war years, it never happened. But that's the scenario she's showing us. And what I'm interested in talking about is a way of thinking about feminist cinema, drawing on a scholar named Claire Johnston, um, who 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 talked about, she and others talked about an earlier phase of feminist scholarship on cinema, which was all about the image of the woman and what kind of image, what kind of representation of women the cinema allows, or what you can extend that to what kind of representation of Black Americans we see in the cinema. So this Claire Johnston called the images of mode of feminism. And she and others like her at this time, um, including Laura Mulvey, were saying that just changing the representation without changing the language of cinema is not really a change. And by that, they meant it's not enough to put women in, to make films that give women more screen time. You may have heard of the Bechdel test, which has become popular more recently, which is basically a shorthand way of judging a film as to whether it's has even a slight element of feminism. The Bechdel test says, okay, does the film have women in it? If so, do the women speak to each other or only to men? And then if they do speak to each other, do they speak about um, anything other than the men? Those are the three rules of the Bechdel test. What I would say is that the Bechdel test today is a regressive move back into thinking about images of. So in other words, by the Bechdel test, as long as you have those three forms of representation, you have a feminist film. Well, these scholars of the 70s were saying that no, actually, unless you change the language of cinema, you're still retaining certain structures in place. And by that, we mean things like what kind of lighting and framing does the woman have? And if I had time, I could show you examples where you have a film with a very strong feminist film, quote unquote, that passes the Bechdel test with flying colors. And then, but cinematically, she's still represented uh, through certain forms of lighting, framing, screen time that are no different from other ways of looking at cinema, and therefore actually don't change the way we think about women in film. So I wanted to, needless to say, Julie Dash is all about changing the language of cinema. I had a couple of clips, but even before we look at the clips, in this case, I want to illustrate what I mean by this sort of framing that changes how we think about cinema. So in the case of this film, I think if we went just by dialogue, plot, and characters, we would have plenty to say about the film's feminism, the film's expression of what we today call microaggressions. This is what I'm forgetting the main character's name. What is her name? Can somebody remind me? um, yeah, I tend to forget the characters' names. She has a French-sounding name. Anyway, she experiences all kinds of microaggressions, right? That's what we would call it today. So, as I said, with just plot, character, and dialogue, we would have plenty to talk about. But I think it's worth stopping and looking at uh, Julie Dash's brilliant framing, shot composition, lighting. For example, here, and I'll link to a clip if it works. As you can see here, we have in the foreground the secretary, blonde woman, speaking on the phone. In the background, we have our main character. She's seated, she's looking at a piece of paper, which we see she's reading a letter. And then off screen, we hear the voice of the boss. So we have a certain hierarchy here. If we go by what we know from sound studies, we know that the off-screen voice or the disembodied voice exerts a power over the image. So the voice that we hear off screen is the voice of the boss speaking on the phone to another producer. Then we have the secretary in the foreground speaking, making his appointments, and we have Mignon, that's her name, Mignon in the background. So Mignon is kind of caught between two voices, the secretary and the producer. And you know from the story that the producer does not take her ideas seriously at all. But on the other hand, we have a different model of femininity, a more dominant model in this secretary. So let me just see if the clip works. Just let me know if you can see this. Can somebody let me know if you can see a clip?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
I'm going to
yes.
make it full screen.
Yeah.
Young trooper in here right now, pumping out Tom Shatner training films.
With love.
I also want you to be aware of, you probably already noticed, this film is full of images in the background. Sometimes she'll give us a close-up of it, and sometimes she won't. And I think this is a common point between this film and Discreet Charm of the Savarnas, which I'll speak about next, which also has a subtext in the form of images like this in the background. So to continue.
remember, Julius?
Oh, the scientific method, Jerry. That's the future. Films prepared by experts in history and psychology.
Somewhere in the South Pacific.
Ain't nothing like a movie to show a man how to load a gun. Well, call it what you want. We give him hell and sing him a song. No, well, that's right. A new world has come to the rescue of the old.
So this secretary is silent. We don't hear her. And I'm not going to play anymore, but she kind of prances out, twirls around, very much the kind of to be looked at-ness that Laura Mulvey talks about, for presented in the foreground. The frame is divided into half. She's in the foreground. These are very intentional types of framings. There's a lot we could talk about. I don't want to take up way too much time, so I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint here. And then this one, again, I want to, this is the kind of core of the film, one could say. It's framed just very spectacularly. I just want to take us to one spot in it. So,
Yeah, I remember before the war, hundreds of male dancers and singers. I like the colored tap dancers best.
So that's another, I like the colored tap dancers best, just a small microaggression there. But let me move this forward a little bit.
This technique we like to try. Mind you, we don't have.
Okay, Charlie, if it's anything to save us, let's do it.
Well, we brought in this little girl that did the math.
Again, little girl. So just this is all dialogue here. It's a long take. We hear the entire dialogue here, and then we are going to move on, and we see Mignon kind of sort of upset about it.
Well, let's do it.
Esther, honey, can you hear me?
So then this is where the images begin, and then she comes in. And we have this setup where in terms of the story world of the film, we understand why the image looks the way it is, which is that they're looking through a glass and there are some reflections. But I think we are also invited to read it somewhat metaphorically, that there are these doubled white male figures framing the woman who comes in to sing. And then this entire scene is framed in this way, with multiple frames, with doubled images and so on. And I won't like read it for you, but I just want to invite us to think about why these framings add a layer of meaning and say something to us. So let me go back now to my PowerPoint again. So this is one of the images that maybe you couldn't see clearly when the camera zooms in. This is she's in the phone booth, and it says, "I am so an American." And this scene, I won't play the clip, though I have it queued up, is the one in which we learn a lot of things about her. And I want to make sure that we understand one of them, which is that she is passing as white. And her mother asks her here if they know. And she says, "I'm not going to tell them. There's no reason for me to tell them." And the rest of the film is also about the young woman who has come to sing, asking her, what's it like? They don't know that you are what, they don't know, do they? So the whole idea of passing is another subterranean subtext of this film. It's an extremely multi-layered film in that sense. But we learn here also that she has a boyfriend who's a soldier. We learn everything we need to learn in this one-sided dialogue. We don't hear the mother, but we just hear her. It's a long take. But then we have also something in the background. So this is what we mean by, it's not just dialogue, character, and plot, but camera work, signage in the background, and repetition and connections between different parts of the film. So to move on, I would say that Discrete Charm of the Savarna does similar things. That is, while it too says plenty at the level of plot, character, and especially dialogue. Certainly there's a ton we could talk about in dialogue, but it also has this other text running in the background. So one set of images comes from American Hollywood, American advertising, literature, film, and so on. So let me just go to a quick clip. This is towards the opening of the film. We see a whole bunch of so and it continues this way, very intentional. This is not something just in the background. So I want to know why we have these images. We should talk about that. Let me go back. I have a couple of other things that I want to share. We have over here, if you can see it, the Vertigo poster in the background. There are some other posters. Down here, we have Toni Morrison's Beloved. And I want to show a quick clip here.
भैया आपने जेम्स बॉल्डविन पढ़ा है क्या?
नहीं सर.
टोनी मॉरिसन? हाँ? Tennessee Coates.
So yes, so the greats of the three greats, one could say almost, of African American literature are referenced here in the dialogue. So to return here and to move on, then we have some Indian references. We have R.K. Narayan's book, and then we have, of course, the Shotrajit Ray film, Aurangzeb Din Ratri. And let me start with a clip here to show another sort of silent layer of, wait, why is it not going to my clip? For some reason, I must have put this in wrong because it's not working. Ah, there we go. Huh, there we go. Okay. This is another, a different way of commenting on what we are seeing. And it's not through dialogue.
Why is this place so crowded today, man?
Some fringe group out there always stalls.
Note the fringe group mentioned here. And of course, we see what this so-called fringe group is. And then, just to continue, finally, I'm not commenting on the narrative because I think it's pretty straightforward and we can talk about it. I think it has a lot in common. We could talk a lot about it in relation to Illusions and also the next film. But this reference to Aurangzeb Din Ratri is brought up again at the conclusion of the film. So let's look at a quick clip here. In the film within the film's self-aggrandizement, and here the dialogue, I think, is quite important.
That was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Swami, it was a wonderful movie. I think it is.
Thank you.
Hey, Dilip.
Hey.
That was a brilliant movie.
Thank you.
It was really bold of you.
This idea of being bold, of course, this is very ironically being used here because there is nothing bold about the film within the film. So let's see now.
Staying for the whole festival?
Yeah.
So this is the reference going back to, again, this sort of ironic representation of these filmmakers, with these sort of transnational global aspirations who are so woke when it comes to other parts of the world, but are completely blind. And then they see themselves, the self-aggrandizement of their film title. Okay, so let me go back and move on to our final film, which is by Howardina Pindell. I will introduce her to you at the end of this segment. I have some clips here as well. This is a very different kind of film from the ones we've watched. It's a film, but it's performance art. I want to strongly assert that this is a video. It was a video film at the time. We might say, well, this is performance art and it could have been done just on stage, but no, it's sort of cinematic qualities are essential to what it's doing. The way in which her storytelling to us is cut with her in whiteface playing somebody else and so on. So there are three things that she does here. One is she plays the person who's sort of kind of grotesquely blonde. The second is she wraps a paper in white toilet paper. And over here on the right, to me, there's a kind of resonance with lynching because of the way she's holding the toilet paper that way and her hand on her neck. And then the third one is the one where she has some sort of layer on her skin that she peels off. So these are the three kind of masks, you could say, that she puts on in addition to being herself. So just to quickly, now this one could not be queued up, so I will have to queue it up to
know that I was black. Perhaps the child did not know. One of the students filed a complaint, perhaps to a parent.
This is it.
She told me she would be happy with my grades to put me in the accelerated level. However, she felt that a white student with lower grades would go further. Therefore, she would not put me in the accelerated course. You know, you really must be paranoid. Those things never happen to me. I don't know anyone who's had those things happen to them.
So sadly, these kinds of microaggressions are all too common, continue to be all too common. But you see the framing of Howardina facing us with no mask on, and then Howardina, from a profile, but in the kind of makeup and mask. And then we have, this is what I meant about her taking off a thing. So these are the three performative roles she takes on here. So I wanted to show a couple more clips, if I can take a little bit more time. This one, again, I have to queue up to 7:35.
And the women stood on another side of the door. She shook hands with all of the white women, skipped over me, shook hands with all of the white men, and then came to me last. You really must be paranoid. Your art really isn't political either. You know, I hear your experiences and I think, well, it's got to be in her art. That's the only way we'll validate you, and it's got to.
So I'm showing this because it moves from childhood, and it's not chronological, but these stories move from childhood to college to personal encounters. But eventually there is a discourse on American art and the art scene, and who is in and who's not in, and what kind of art will get you in. All of that is in this clip too. And then finally, this one here. There's a long take when we watch her slowly remove the toilet paper that we also watched her put on at the beginning of the film. At that time she was talking. At this point there is no sound. no speaking, and just this. And then we have sound. We see the process of putting on this guise.
You ungrateful little, after all we've done for you. You know, we don't believe in your symbols. You must use our symbols. They're not valid unless we validate them. And you really must be paranoid. I've never.
So again, this brings together this whole idea that you're imagining these slurs and insults on the one hand, and the ways in which the art world will accept somebody like her. You must use our symbols. So now I want to tell you about Howardina Pindle, who is not a filmmaker, she's a painter. And I wanted you to read this part from her website, because I think it really helps us understand this film. This idea that she uses a lengthy metaphorical processes of destruction and reconstruction. We see her put on the toilet paper. We see her take it off, very metaphorical. She cuts canvases in strips and sews them back together, building up surfaces in elaborate stages. In this film, she makes her body the surface, and she has multiple layers, multiple forms of it. She paints or draws on sheets of paper, punches out dots, uses stencils. So her fascination with gridded serialized imagery, along with surface texture. So in this case, we might have obviously considered that she's talking about skin color. That's the surface. But it's also part of her general artistic practice to think about surfaces as having layers and as being capable of being constructed and deconstructed. So she's obviously a major artist in the U.S. This film is it's from 1980, so 2 years before Julie Dash. She's probably best known for this film, which, by the way, we had a moment of scare, Geeta and I. It was scrubbed off the internet in early November. It just disappeared. So from time to time, it disappears. So it was with some difficulty that we found a place for it, because the copyright does matter in this case. So that's all I have, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. So I will stop sharing. Let me see. Stop the share.
Thank you, Neepa. That was a really wonderful overview of all the films and the context, many of which were completely, we were watching the films in a kind of decontextualized way. So this helps us make better sense of what we have watched, the three films that we have watched. Anyone who wants to come in on any of the films at this point? Yeah, I don't see anyone who has unmuted themselves.
I just want to add one quick thing, which is that if people have seen the film Singing in the Rain, that film works very well together with Illusions, only on the level of speaking about dubbing. And of course, for us in India, it has a particular resonance because of our familiarity with playback singing, in which context, unlike in either Illusions or Singing in the Rain, the visually absent singer whose voice is borrowed by the actor or actress is very much well known and very much is given credit and is looms large in our consumption of cinema. So that's a huge difference with Hollywood, in which either stars who sing on screen must sing their own songs. There's the legendary factor of what is her name? My Fair Lady, Audrey Hepburn, who won an Oscar, an acting Oscar, but was taken away from her when they learned that she didn't sing the songs. And when that happens in an American film, such as in the story of Singing in the Rain, usually the singer is not credited. So that's a huge difference. So Illusions is another discussion, I would say, an updated discussion that works very well in dialogue with Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, yeah. Please go ahead.
In the case of Illusions, Neepa, wasn't that Ella Fitzgerald's voice?
I can't hear very well. Who's speaking?
And
Geeta,
We can't hear. At least I can't hear you very well.
Okay. Is it better now?
Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was wondering if the singing voice, I mean, like the playback singer in Illusions, was Ella Fitzgerald.
Yes.
No?
Yes.
So that would add another
absolutely
layer to the film, I thought.
Absolutely, really great point. And she is credited, of course, at the end. Yes, great point. Yes.
And I think the film, in the film itself, Mignon Dupre makes a comment on the illusion of cinema itself, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So I think that is, like you're talking about illusions through a medium which is illusionary in nature.
Yes, so, absolutely.
That I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, no, the self-reflexivity, the title works on so many levels. Great point.
And in the case of Free, White, and 21, just one question. When she wraps that bandage around her head, like it ends up looking quite distinctively like the head of a donkey. So I was wondering if there was any significance to that. I couldn't get it at least.
So I didn't mention this, but the other great African-American novel is The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And in fact, Alil Sharon Larkin, who's another LA Rebellion filmmaker, in one of her films, that novel is, read out in the opening scene. Now, he uses the title The Invisible Man, and it's about being Black in America. But of course, there's the H.G. Wells film or book, The Invisible Man, which is a science fiction book. And the film version of H.G. Wells' science fiction story, which was made in the 30s, has a man who is wrapped up in a kind of bandage all the way through. So to me, at least, her wrapping herself up in the toilet paper is a multi-layered reference to the Invisible Man in its two meanings. Because visually, people, if they know the movie, they think of, that. So when I see that, I think of Invisible Man, and the minute I think of it, I think, why is she referring to science fiction? But instantly I remember, of course, Ralph Ellison's book, The Invisible Man. So that's how I see it. But I think the strength of what of something like that is its, open-endedness.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Neepa?
Yes.
I was wondering why you included the Free, White, and 21 thing, which is great, actually. It's really fabulous. I'm going to use it in my classes. The thing is that what struck me, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, is this whole, I actually didn't realize how often it gets used. I mean, that was like amazing. Yeah. But what was quite interesting is that, here you have this question of actual unequal citizenship itself, and this thing about these there is an entitlement to a complete citizenship as a white person in the United States, which you can't have as a Black person. And Uh, is that the reason that you actually put that in with the other one? I mean, I was
Yes,
wondering. Huh.
I put it in there because, Howardina Pindell chooses her title very carefully and ironically, obviously. But I wanted people to know, rather than me saying, oh, there's lots of Hollywood films where young women who are doing bad things use this as an excuse and get away with it. I thought that supercut would really bring home this idea. How frequently it's used, that it's a it's just a figure of speech that's just part of everyday language, that people don't think about exactly this question of unequal citizenship, because 21 is very much about being an adult but white, that these women are well aware. They are actually very well, they don't say I'm white, I'm free, and I'm 21 therefore I'm free. The fact that they say that they're white, it's a shorthand, instant giveaway of white supremacy. And
Yeah.
that's what she's referring to.
Yeah, yeah, and the normalization of white privilege. I mean, that is
Yes.
very, very much there. Okay, so was it that why I've forgotten what was her film called?
It's called Free, White, and 21.
It's called Free, White, and 21.
Yes.
Okay. That's the connection. I'm so
That's
sorry.
the title. Yes, that's the title of Howardina Pindell's film.
That's interesting. Okay.
So I find this, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Aparna.
Yeah, this discrete charm of Savarnas, found it really interesting. It's, and equally interesting is the commentary by Neepa. I think it sort of, it again sort of endorses the kind of stereotypical perceptions, and I don't really look at it as discrete. It's more of a strategic approach of the Savarnas rather. So I think, you have this character of the woman there, out of the three friends, who is so very politically correct when it comes to, her approach to feminism and, how women should, the whole idea of naming women as bitch and so on and so forth. But what was interesting is when they happened to meet this, firstly, the whole idea, I'm going to go one by one. What sort of arrested my attention, especially in this particular film, it's like, you are talking all about class revolution without as much as touching upon the caste issue. That's one thing that, sort of came to my notice. That, one can really clamor around for issues like Black Lives Matter when it comes to the case of lynching of a black man, where all the Savarnas will clamor and gather, but as much as ignoring the caste issue, or that it's something which is normalized, it's there. So, you don't want to talk about it, don't wish to talk about it. So that's one thing. Also, what is interesting is that Vitthal Umap's song there, which is generally and regularly played on occasions, on Ambedkar Jayanti, or so this whole idea of cultural appropriation, what I find is very, of not just the political movement, but icons, I remember Ramvilas Paswan, when he passed away very recently. I mean, he was one politician who had won with a majority, when he won his elections with a huge majority. But when he passes away, this whole idea of Ambedkar becoming a Dalit icon, or Paswan becoming a Dalit icon. So it's like that. It becomes again that whole process of naming. You are somewhere, by labeling, you are trying to. In a way, you're trying to cut off the image of that persona by half there itself. So that whole idea of calling somebody a Dalit icon, and sort of again the appropriation of that icon for a particular group, or a community, that is something something which was visible there. And it sort of reminded me of this one film that I had seen by Buñuel, The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, which sort of echoes somewhere, perhaps borrows the title from this film by Buñuel. So I think these were a few observations that I wanted to make. That, and the ridiculous part of the whole thing is the utter frustration of the Savarnas again, where you talk of Baldwin, you talk of Ralph Ellison, you talk of Toni Morrison, and then Obama, which sort of comes up. I mean, and asking a cab driver whether. So it also highlights the frustration of the Savarnas, to me, to a large extent. The whole idea of visualizing, the perception towards Dalit, that, to play a Dalit character, you have to be, it's like, oh, you are a Dalit, but you don't look like one. It's that whole idea which sort of comes again and again. And I don't know if I'm reading this right, if I'm, making a right observation here, but when these three friends are supposed to meet somebody at Borivali Park, I've gone through this film and I noticed that there's a woman who comes up and all the three bear a very shocked, there's a shocked expression on their face. So I thought it was again the same endorsement of, oh, you're a Dalit, but you don't look like one. So I think these are, in this very short film, there are many layers that, of caste that can be sort of explored, the whole idea of the Savarnas not coming out of this idea of victimhood, or understanding the complexities of casteism is very perceptible. Thank you. Just a few observations.
Thank you. I also thought it was, I mean, the film is very, on many levels, it indicts its characters, I would say. And one of them too is that they have not one of them has ever been on a train before. Yeah. And I think this film also is doing something with appearance and reality, like with illusions, right? Yeah. This idea that, there's a lot in the dialogue.
But it's a very relevant, it's a relevant fact where even in academia, you kind of come face to face. Oh, you're a Dalit, but you don't look like one.
Right.
So the whole idea of how you look should kind of define your Dalitness is something very,
These assumptions about how a Dalit person
Dalit should look.
Yeah, and then there's all this sort of build up. That's the other, I think, brilliance of the film is that there's a build up towards the end. And like they talk about this friend of theirs who's he's not quite middle class, he's lower middle class, but he doesn't look Dalit. And, the big question here is, what does looking Dalit mean?
Looking Dalit mean, right. Yeah.
And then it turns out that one of them apparently can look Dalit because he ends up in the film. And he's apparently very bold because he took this role. But the guy that she goes to from Tinder, he's offended that he would be asked to play the role of a Dalit person. So there's many layers of this idea.
There are many, of course, there are many layers.
Wonderful, yeah.
Anyone else who would like to come in at this point? Neepa, I think the three films together also, in a kind of fortuitous way, speak to each other. So
I think, true.
Yeah, go ahead, Aparna.
No, you carry on. I was thinking about the other one, White and 21, Again, the same racial stereotypes, where... So in a way, I'm glad that those kind of stereotypes are no longer used in cinema. But, so I am young, white, and 21. That particular film, again, I see a lot of, I see commonalities in these short films that were, so yeah.
Sanjay Kumar, please go ahead.
In fact, both the films, Illusions and The Discreet Charm of Savarnas, can be seen as the example of reflexive cinema, like the way they are attracting our attention to the cinematic artifice. So we see that in the discrete charm, first of all, we have the poster of Vertigo, where this famous fall scene is there. And this guy is also sleeping in that same posture, which probably shows that it's a fall for him, because all of a sudden he comes to know the news that this actor has left. So now this is a big problem. They have to find out the actor for the film they are going to make. So in a way, this film, The Discrete Charm, shows what kind of problems people face when they are making the films, how they are going to resolve, and how filmmakers follow certain character conventions, that this character has to be like that. So, well, in this case, it is about the cast. It can be applied to even certain regional also features. Okay, this person is from this region, so oh, you have to be like that. Certain stereotypes which filmmakers keep on repeating in several films without much reflection. And the title itself has been taken. We have seen that they are watching this film of Satyajit Ray, Aranyar Din Ratri, and then finally the title of their own film, when it is released, that is Mahanagar Din Ratri. So it is inspired from there. And then finally screening takes place at Goethe Institute, which is again the example of what kind of audience, what kind of spectators you get at such places, and how people receive. So the final scene ends with the reception of the film. So a lot of things which are involved in the filmmaking, they are shown. So these are the meta cinematic strategies uh, to attract the attention of the spectators to the filmmaking itself. And in Illusions also we have how this girl is saying that, who is working as playback singer, that she would like to see herself at the screen. So she has this aspiration that how, those people are so famous, so glamorous, and everybody talks about them. Whereas she is just hidden, like nobody notices her. And then Mignon is talking about the effects of war, which could have been shown in the film, rather than just presenting a glamorous picture and saying that, okay, talking about patriotism, how soldiers are fighting at the war. So she would like to she would like to, produce films on war in a different way. So that is one perspective she gives. And the participation of the Afro-American, of the Amerindians. This is there is one letter, one written document, which says in the film that there are some Amerindians who are participating in the war, and since they have their own language, so they use the code which the enemies cannot decode. So that is one advantage, that in a way showing the participation of Amerindians in the war. But these things do not appear on the screen. These things do not appear in the films. That is so Mignon is complaining about that. And finally, and finally she says at towards the end of the film that there are many stories to be told and many battles to begin. So that in a way summarizes what she would like to, what kind of films she would like to produce and see.
So this idea of her, when she pitches an idea for a film, which he rejects, and that's the one you're talking about, which is about the Navajo code talkers. And we should remember that that means that Julie Dash in 1982 is thinking about a film like this. Well, it took to the mid 90s, I believe, when Hollywood finally actually made a film about the Navajo code talkers. I think it was late 90s that film. So Julie Dash actually had that idea, you know, and put it in the mouth of her character back then.
Amarendra Pandey and then Swaralipi Nandi.
Yeah, I looking at this overall theme of the discrete charm of the Savarnas. I was thinking about how it plays in real life, especially politics, and what title could we give it to things like whether it's discrete charm of Savarnas or indiscrete charm of Savarnas. Say, for example, two examples I can think of is when this present presidential elections were supposed to happen in India when Congress like proposed the name of Meera Kumar. BJP posed Ramnath Kovind, and like nobody ever heard of Ramnath Kovind before that. So that whether it's a discrete charm of Savarnas or indiscrete charm of Savarnas, we can debate over this. And then going back to 1940s, 1937, 38, when Ambedkar filed his nomination, Congress actually pitted uh, Palwankar Balu, a cricketer, a Dalit cricketer, against him.
So
Right.
that's strategic charm of the Savarnas.
That's a strategic charm of Savarnas. I was like fascinated by the title of the film, and I was like thinking about this political, real-time politics and the charm of the Savarnas in that. Karke. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Neepa, you would like to come in?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I didn't know that Congress put up another Dalit against. That's.
Yeah, Swaralipi, please go ahead.
Yeah, firstly, a wonderful discussion. Thank you for that. Really enjoyed the discussion on all the three films. I think when we talk about the issues of casting, especially of marginal characters in a film, we also need to take into consideration what it means on screen for the audience, because the parallel between Aurane Dinratri and this film, where Simi Garwal, a distinctly white upper class woman, when cast in the role of Dooli. We go ahead and critique Ray for doing so, but then when you come to think about it, Dooli's character is one of an entirely sexualized woman. I mean, she has no agency whatsoever at all. So, I mean, how would it have been if we had actually seen a Dalit woman cast in that role? So these are questions that are very, critical to look at. I mean, looking at the choice of Ray's casting, I mean, when he goes for Sadgati, he goes for Smita Patel. When he goes for Dooli, he goes for Simi Garwal. But then when he is casting Indit Thakuran, for example, he actually goes into the slums and he picks up this lady to cast in the role. So would you, think of it as a very, I would like to believe that he did it on purpose because of what it would mean for the audience, because his audience would primarily be upper class urban audiences of Calcutta, and not so much in terms of, because he was distinctly making a different kind of a film. So casting a Dalit character and how it comes across, or casting a character from marginalized community and how it comes on the screen. Would you be, exoticizing that character on screen? And these are also questions that we need to take into account when we're talking, especially of this medium.
I think your comment points out that this film is implicitly critiquing Ray. I hadn't thought of that, but you're absolutely right. It is implicitly critiquing Ray, because in the context of this film, we are invited to think about his casting choice, exactly the way you said. So, yeah.
Can I just say something here very quickly?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Mugur Dinratri is also interesting sort of device that this Rajamani is used, also because of the reference to Ambedkar. I mean, it's very interesting that Arunidhin Ratri, there is a similarity apart from the casting choice of Simi and I mean, that's a parallel. But the question of these, this sort of inversion of a gaze that happens in both cases, and that's a similarity between the two films in a sense. Yeah. But what is quite interesting is that here you have these very woke people, okay, cursing, for example, cursing traffic, and the reason the traffic is there is because of Chaitya Bhumi congregation, which, as anyone familiar knows, that 6 to 7 lakh people arrive from everywhere in India on Ambedkar's birth anniversary. So, and that's where they are actually doing this cursing of,
and calling it a fringe group.
Calling it
a fringe group.
Yes.
Yes.
And the Mahanagar-Din Ratri, which actually also has some, at least the way I saw it, has some reference to the way in which Ambedkar actually saw the city and its cosmopolitanism as potentially liberating for Dalits. And, so this, I think it works, perhaps it works at many levels, although maybe the critique of Ray is really the principal one. I don't know. But the fact that the confusion of these, people in Arunidhin Ratri, the way in which they other tribals, the way in which Ray himself has other tribals by using Simi, but whatever, that it's also happening in the city and in the context of December 6th, which is the day that they are actually venturing on. I think that's very significant as well.
Yeah, and also, to a large extent, when you look at the whole idea of these people wanting to make a film with the Dalit, character and somebody who belongs to the Dalit community, I think it's also a in a very subtle way, kind of a commentary on the tokenist inclusions that kind of. Not just in social arena, but when it comes to cultural artistic representations too. So I think somewhere it also hits upon this whole idea of representations to be made, but then how those are to be made. What is the peculiar Savarna gaze, when so I think it sort of hits on numerous points, and we are left to ponder. It's a just very brilliantly made film, I should say. So it kind of moves around on. It's like a iceberg where you need to really decipher several layers, and which are in some way or the other so relevant. So one of which is also tokenist inclusions. So like, okay, yeah, you're talking about them, but you're talking in a way which you need not talk about them. So I think these are things which are very perceptible, which are very obvious.
Padikal sir, you have unmuted yourself. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah,
please go ahead.
Yeah, I am wondering if Neepa has something to say relating, because this film actually reminds us, the masterpiece by Louis Buñuel, The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeois.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on that? And,
yes,
I think Aparna already.
Yeah, I mentioned that. Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to continue, Aparna?
No, I would like to know your take on it.
It seems to me that The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie is, of course, quite a very savage sort of satire on the middle class bourgeoisie, and it's, of course, also surreal in its mode of presentation, which this film is not at all. But I think it's aligning itself with other cinemas and producing a commentary. I see it as a kind of almost like a sort of joke title, in the sense that it's showing us what title the film within the film takes, which combines two Satyajit Ray films. And but the film itself takes a Buñuel reference, with which it has actually very little connection, other than the the class as opposed to caste. And I think that the film, it's a mismatch in the sense that what the film is doing is wanting us to maybe put aside class for the moment and think about caste, because a typical move is to talk in terms of class, and that thereby short circuit any discussion on caste. That is a frequent mode in which this type of cinema works, right? So to me, the reference to Buñuel is a kind of red herring. It's the wrong kind of reference. It's there's no, he's talking about something. It's a different style.
No, it talks about a complete complacency as well as,
of course,
a complete detachment from reality of the ruling class.
Yes.
So in that sense,
it does work.
Yes,
Please
add, to the discussion, that is, on the one hand, that it's certainly a well-made film. It can be read as a critique of Roy, that is because of that his difficulty, like these people, in finding the ubiquitous tribal people and casting Simi Garewal. On the other hand, it could also be read that there is a point where Sumitra and his great gang go there, and then in the wilderness they will find that their status and their hierarchy is totally meaningless in the wilderness, because that is also one of the statement of Rai, that is I mean the imagined kind of Orientalism or romance, that when it is really encountering reality in that darkness, in that wilderness, there is a moment of that realization, that it is meaningless for them. And I think there is a moment here too, that when they reach that point of the impossibility for the Savarnas to really even tokenize or caste Dalit, even if they are ubiquitous, through the sound. So I think that is a moment, that where we can also think of, that why Ray should ultimately haunt the film, that how, that ultimately this wilderness is right there where you are living in the city. It's not elsewhere. So that way we can read. And also to coming back to the Buñuel, point, I think one of the way, the authorial theme of Buñuel is about, the coitus interruptus in all his films. Whether it is, exterminating angel or, discrete charm of the bourgeoisie, it will always be, even a very mundane act like eating a dinner, it cannot take place. Something or the other will be, it will always keep on interrupting. And in, discrete charm of the bourgeoisie, again he has, even if it's a highly surreal film, as Neepa pointed out, but it has a series of interruptions. And there is a moment when this play is staged and they are not happy with the actors. And consequently, it leads to a scene where they're all shot, that in a very surreal fashion. So we can see that, that might be one of the subconscious element, perhaps, that might have, enabled him to, draw from Buñuel, for his title. So, I mean, these are, of course, one way when I'm focusing and making this big stretch to read this film, why you should have thought about Buñuel for the title. So that way, I think, that has a relevance. And also, to go back to, Neeta's own work, in a, extraordinarily, seminal, book on Hindi cinema, the Wanted Cultures Ladies Only. She tells about the sound and the image, dichotomy, and particularly, when it is gendered, that is, and she also talks about the doubling of role. I think it has a great significance, for all these films we watched, because as it is curated by Neepa, I also wanted to draw attention there, because when you look at, the idea of the minstrel figure, it mostly about a man, it's about the image, but the real politics is about the gravitas, is about the sound, when it is gendered. And that is why I think illusion is special. That what happens, when a black has to perform for the white through the sound. I think, that I can read that in continuity of the politics in your book, Neepa, actually. That is, and when you come from, the mignon figure to, this woman character in Savarnas, that where she's, forced to be appropriate, in this kind of, there is that continuity, that we can read through. So that's what I wanted to say. And I also wanted to thank you for your book.
Thank you. One thing I forgot to mention, maybe it was obvious, maybe not. I should say that Illusions was Julie Dash's student film. So this was her thesis film, and it has really withstood the test of time, I think.
Yes, no, absolutely. And also we can see, how it, ties into our masterpiece,
Yes.
The dust and
yes.
the dust. And you can see that, most of these great filmmakers, I always observed, like if you look at, Scorsese's, work at Tisch School of Art or Polanski's in film Polska, you can see that it is just the variations on the same theme they've been working throughout their life, actually.
Yeah.
So for, some of these highly committed and visionary students, their thesis film itself becomes, it reveals the soul of their creativity for us. And this is one of those kind of films, Illusions.
Yeah. In fact, Daughters of the Dust is the kind of film that Mignon would have wanted to make. Those many stories, a story that isn't normally told. Yeah.
In the chat, Paniraj says another short from Neelam Films, Modi and a Beer, is another satirical take on issues that are discussed with these three shots.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I must look it up.
Yeah, Paniraj sir, would you like to say something? Okay, anyone else? Yeah, Sanjay Kumar, please go ahead.
In this film, The Discreet Charm of Savarnas, we have seen caste stereotypes, but there are other stereotypes also which are hinted through different images. Like the conflation of the fair skin and the beautiful. Okay. So it is not only in the common parlance that you have the fair skin associated with beauty, but also philosophically endorsed by writers like Edmund Burke, who wrote a book which became very famous and which was influential in particularly for the literary people, that he says that the colors of beautiful ladies must not be dusky or muddy, but clean and fair. That is the sentence. He gives several characteristics of the beauty. The book is on beauty and the sublime. These are the concepts which are used in literature. Later on, for example, Victor Hugo used the concepts of the sublime and the grotesque. So beauty has several characteristics, like fragility, so many things. It has to be small. All these things are there. And one of the characteristics is that the skin should be fair. Okay. That so it is obviously, I mean, by today's standard, racist, but that is how it was looked at that period, and in a certain way it continues even today. So we have the title of the first chapter, like this film is divided in 3 chapters, chapter 1, 2, 3, and we have prologue and epilogue. The title of the first chapter says mirror, mirror on the wall. Again, mirror, mirror on the wall, that refers to the statement of evil queen in the fairy tale Snow White, which was written in 19th century in German. So mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? So there also fairest is about the person who is the most beautiful. And there is an ad of Pierce soap, which is used in this film. One of the pictures hanging on the wall during the initial credits. We see this poster, which is of 1890. And of course, even today, Pierce soap exists. That is one of the British brands of soap. So it has one person, white person washing his hand, who is supposed to be captain of a ship. And then outside, there is a white person who is handing over a soap to a black person who is sitting on the ground. So, and it says white man's burden lightened. White man's burden lightened. Again, later on, it came in the poem of Rudyard Kipling in 1899. So, how the stereotypes lead to prejudices, prejudices end up in discrimination. This link, this journey from stereotypes to discrimination is also shown in this film. So, on the one hand, of course, which is foregrounded is the caste stereotype, but there are other types of stereotypes which can finally end in discrimination. So that is also shown in this film.
And that soap reference in that film also has a connection to Howardina Pindell's Free White and 21. In the story, she tells about her mother being the darkest skinned sibling, and somebody trying to wash her with lye to clean her up, and that she still has burn marks on her hand from that. There's a direct link with that.
In fact, one of the advertisements of Pierce soap was where a child is, that is another one which is not used in this film. A white child is giving one soap to a black child who is taking a bath, and this black child finally becomes white. Below the head, his whole body becomes white. So again, that there is obviously racist, but that was used as advertisement at that time, which was commonly accepted and not found to be objectionable, I think. But that's a pity.
Yeah. One of the things that I think all the three films kind of do is, I mean, generally when one talks about, Dalits, or one talks about women, more or less one limits one's discussions to how they get represented on the screen. Here, both in the discrete charm of the Savarnas and in Illusions, and the other one as well, Free White and 21, the interesting aspect is who gets framed and how they come out looking so poor in the end. So the training of and the framing really of the film in the first the discrete charm of the Savarnas on the three Savarna characters, for instance, really more than pointing out to the representation of Dalits on screen or on popular media, or who should play a Dalit character, is really about the Savarnas. It's a commentary on the Savarnas, and it's a commentary on, in some ways, they are a double speak, I would think, as is it in Free White and 21. So that way, I think that we take the gaze away from, we are so used to framing the Dalits in some ways and talking about how they get represented or don't get represented on the screen, to how Savarnas come across here, I thought is very interesting. Savarnas, or even the white, the black woman morphing as white and saying the things that are usually said by whites to blacks. I thought that is coming out very strongly, and that's the point that I was making about how these three films really speak to each other when we watch them, like this side by side. Yeah, anyone else? Yeah, Nandini. Nandini, Padikal sir, Nandini, they're all posting in the chat. Do you want to say anything?
No, I was just reminded of Adrian Piper's work, actually.
Yes.
So that's what. So there, in her installations also, she says very brilliant paper, no? Passing for White, Passing for Black.
Yes, yes,
About her
absolutely.
experience at Columbia. And
That's the reading I assign with this film when I teach it.
yeah, it's quite brilliant. And her
Yeah.
and her installations, which actually have data on basically on racial miscegenation in the United States. So it's quite interesting the way in which, I was reminded of her work very strongly, and even with some, with Dalit students who often, especially women who, say sometimes that the problems they face when they're fair-skinned, and how do they then, not negotiate, but how do they there's no negotiation, but how do they sort of deal with, their the kind of comments and so on that they get from everybody, including their Dalit friends. And so I often sort of refer them to this paper by Adrian Piper. And so I was reminded of her work. That's all.
Yeah, anyone else?
Yeah, could I say something?
Yeah, please go ahead, Rajan. Please go ahead.
In fact, when we look at this, the discrete charm, there's one scene that reminded me of something else. That's when this guy invites, the Tinder guy invites them out for lunch, and he said, "Are you going to have lunch?" Right? And I thought of an essay by Aniket Zagre, which is called "Eating with the Dalit and Eating the Dalit," right? Which is interesting because that's what we do. We don't like to eat with Dalits, but we want to make movies. Oh, here's movies, but he's talking about literature, right? We like to read Dalit literature, we like to comment about it and all those kind of things. But the actual act of eating with the Dalit is something that the moment of shock on the two guys, you're going to eat with him? Yeah, I think that is a very interesting kind of moment. Yeah. And the same language, at least Fair White in 21, the same language is used by upper caste people even now. Of course, I'm talking about Gujarat, and I'm talking about a specific conference in Unja, right, where Satya Narayana was there, and he was the keynote speaker, etc. And Jagdish Joshi was once upon a time my student, right? He says, "Finish what you have to say in 2 minutes," right? And we have given you permission to talk, right? That's the language that is still being used over here. We have had a Dalit conference and we have given you the permission to talk. So that's so distinctly what's going on even now in India. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and on the chat, Paniraj posts that Neelam Films and Team Paranjit are really creating aesthetic debate on every hegemonic classification, which left has modeled in Indian context. The shots are really bringing depth of unseen cultural inequalities which are brushed in mainstream left debate. I like this blue avant-garde. So that's what he says. Anyone else? Yeah, Tarakeshwar, go ahead.
I think the films are much more complex than what we are trying to discuss. For example, this discrete charm of the Savarnas, it is not simply about upper class stereotypes about who a Dalit is. If you look at the narrative carefully, the characters, the Savarna characters in the film, are quote unquote progressive. They would like to identify themselves with Dalit issues. But the problem is the kind of discourse that they are using to talk about Dalit politics. I think that is the problem. There is a dichotomy between the quote unquote ground reality and the discourse that they are borrowing. The discourse that they are borrowing is American cultural studies model, which mainly hinges around the notion of color, race. So superimposing the color of the notion of the discourse of race on the issue of caste is something that seems to be problematic there. So that's why these three are well-meaning. They want to make a film based on a Dalit issue, keeping the real Dalit as the protagonist, but the discourse that with which they are operating has come from American academia. And they are reading American literature, they are reading Black literature. So there is a lot of indications within the narrative to say that the way Indian academia is talking about Dalit issues today. Not only the Indian academia, even the certain so-called aesthetic fields. So it is not a feature film that they're talking about. It's a short movie which can be shot in 2 days. So the alternative movies that are being made is also somewhere influenced by the American academic discourse. I think that is the point that they are making at one level. Why I'm stressing on this point is beyond using these films, which are very rich, in fact, just to talk about the racial bias or the caste bias, we need to look at the question of representation itself. So they are raising the issues related to the philosophy of representation, the politics of representation, the aesthetics of representation. So at that level, I think if you could take this discussion, it would be more useful rather than simply talking in terms of white bias or the upper caste bias. That's where we could move away from the narrow notions of representation with which we operate. Even the film that came in 1983, I think that was the time when the question of representation has already come into the academics with the rise of cultural studies. I think this film is also a take on that. Though there might be limitations in the way the film is framing it through the title, but the title itself becomes ironic. So it has been already pointed out by certain other people that it is a comment on the medium too, whether the film or any kind of representation is capable of representing quote unquote the ground reality or the proper representation. So the question is about the proper representation. So what is the proper representation? And how do we address that issue? In fact, this discrete charm of the Savarnas, that film, the way it ends, the Savarna representing the Dalit is an ironic one, but an important one. So it is not the question of who is representing the Dalit, but what happens, the politics and the aesthetics and the philosophy of representation that goes into it, that needs to be discussed rather than the question of representation, I think. I don't know whether I made myself clear. because these issues have been raised not only in the context of color, that is race, or the question of caste, or the question of gender. So we have a history of men acting as women, how far men can act or not, and then what are the implications of these representations too. That is another aspect. Because in Kannada film industry too, even in the mainstream film industry, we have had discussions about who could represent Basvanda. Can Dr. Rajkumar represent Basvanda? And when somebody said he can't, through a fictionalized image, if he does the role of Basvanda, how would Dr. Rajkumar would look? Then there was an uproar in the industry. And this kind of the power of the representation is something that uh, animates the society that looks at. So the this dynamics between the way the representations are received and reacted to is also important. Not only the way the representation is produced or framed, but how they are received too needs to be looked at. I think that is also important in the question of representation. So we need to push further this discussion in the direction of philosophy and theory of representation further. Thank you.
I think of the three films, the one that does this kind of work the most is Free White and 21, because she is literally very in a mode of extreme artifice, changing her own representation. There's of course a long history of blackface that is kind of indirectly or implicitly referred to in her putting on not actually white face. She doesn't paint her face. She puts on that we see only at the end. It's a wig and a something over her face. But I think she is exactly kind of asking us to think about whose face is on the screen and what is done to that face, who gets to speak, who gets to appropriate another identity. Because when you see her in whiteface, you first think of, oh, blackface is bad, therefore whiteface must be bad. But I know of other films by black filmmakers in the US who also use whiteface. One of them is called it's called Watermelon Man, and the entire film is about a very racist white man. The opening scenes are all about letting us understand just how racist he is. It's also a kind of comedy. I mean, he buys a suntan machine, and the suntan machine malfunctions and makes him black. And so the rest of the film, this is a black actor who puts on whiteface to play the racist white man, who then becomes black and then has to live his life as a black man and face all the racism that he had himself, perpetrated at the beginning of the film. So she's Howardina Pinder at the beginning, and that film, by the way, was from 1962, I think. It's by Melvin Van Peebles. It's his first film. Melvin Van Peebles went on to kind of inadvertently launch the blaxploitation cycle of films in Hollywood. But so I think her film is actually engaging in this sort of discussion of representation through what she does in her performance.
One aspect is, what you're saying, Neepa. The other is also about who can represent. And for instance, I mean, the Malayalam film Celluloid, traces this entire controversy about this actor called P.K. Rosie, a Dalit woman who plays a Nair woman on screen, and then the whole theater is burned down and the film is destroyed. In that sense, it seems as if Simi Garawal playing a tribal woman is, perfectly, in some ways, naturalized. Whereas a Dalit woman playing, either herself in some kind of a scripted way or expected way is fine, but playing a Nair woman or some other role. So I think it also has something to do with who can represent whom on stage or screen, and who would be acceptable. Yeah.
No, it is not only the question of representing. Even if you represent, you should not get the credit. The body doubles, for example,
right?
Yeah.
So they don't get the credit, though they will be representing the quote unquote whoever it is. These are very interesting questions that we need to think about. I was also not suggesting that there is no fruitful engagement with the American anti-race movement or black movement by the Dalit movement. So there are when these two discourses have met or interacted with each other, there are some fruitful moments too. In fact, I can remember that in 90s, many quote unquote Dalit writers took up a kind of comparative study of Dalit writing with the black writers too. So that was and we also know that the Panthers influenced the Dalit movement in Karnataka to some extent. But
the Dalit Panthers in Bombay.
Yeah.
Very much direct influence. And in fact, J.V. Powell, who translated the Dalit Panthers, wrote about them. He named his daughter Angela after Angela Davis. So
and also this Durban movement, where they tried to take caste to the Durban and saying that it is in a way racist, and after that there are many publications by people like Kailaya in the direction too. So I'm not saying there is a problem, but the narrative is clearly indicating that there is a problem with people who have read this quote unquote American discourses on race and then trying to understand the caste issue. As Nandini pointed out, the important moment in that is these people are talking about this, and then there is a big gathering that is happening there, and they don't know the importance of it. So I think that's where the issues between the discourse and the reality is highlighted in that narrative.
Yeah, Sridhar, you've shared in the chat box. Would you like to say something? Sridhar, go ahead.
I wrote it whatever I wanted to say.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I was thinking is, see, we were discussing from the point of view of the other, in the sense that the experience of a black or Dalit or a victim, and the social movements and even the academy also justified their studies in that name. But though decades passed, centuries are passing, there is no it's not in sight that they're going to come down. So these people are reversing the question and putting as a puzzle, saying that instead of looking from the victim point of view, see the perpetrator point of view. How sick they are? Aren't they sick of doing all these kind of things? So in a satirical form, and they try to do that kind of. I don't know. My reading maybe not be correct, but I'm trying to think on that lines.
Yeah.
See the experience, the agency. These are really dragged to an extent that you cannot go back. To such an extent, agency and structure questions are pulled to a, people forget about the origins, beginnings of it, original questions. So that's why these people are reminding us, are making not about satire about any Savarna or white, but it is question to us. Those who think about their rights, those who think about welfare or justice. So it's, I see that kind of a tinge in it. Otherwise, these people have good name. They could not make things in such a what is it called, insignificant ways. They have a purpose. Both the makers, illusion and this, they have good track record, good assessment of what is going on. So in that way also we have to see.
Yeah.
You can correct me. I was thinking only on that lines.
Yeah, fine, Sridhar. In fact, that's somewhat similar. I mean, I too began by thinking about these films in exactly the same way. Yeah. Yes, Paniraj sir. He has a throat problem, so let me read out. They are reversing the reformist roles which have been incorporated in normalizations, Sridhar. So Paniraj agrees with you. Anyone else? Okay. Uh, okay, if there's, yes, sir, Swarnavel sir, please go ahead.
No, I just, no, I just wanted to, thank you all, for this wonderful, I really enjoyed, all these weeks, the wonderful, choice of films and discussion. So I just wanted to thank you. Yeah, thank you, Neepa, Nikhila, Geeta, Tarkeshwar, and all, Sridhar, so many people here, Nandini, for all your participation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. I think Geeta is waiting for the formal vote of thanks. If no one has anything to say on the films, I think we'll move to the formal vote of thanks and over to Geeta.
I also would like to thank both Neepa Majumdar and Geeta for this month that we could watch these short films curated by them and the wonderful discussions we had about them. Thank you, both of you.
The quantity and number of films are too much for my reception.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've come to the end of our sessions during of this short film festival, and personally for me it has been really an enriching experience, and I'm deeply grateful to Dr. Neepa Majumdar, who not only agreed to curate the films for us, but has also moderated 3 out of the 4 sessions. And even during the course of planning this festival, she has been so prompt with communication, and I had a wonderful time associating with her. Thank you very much, Neepa, and I hope you continue to attend the sessions of Talking Films online as and when you have the time.
Thank you both very much for this. I really enjoyed this, and the discussions have been so enriching, as you said. I mean, everybody brought so much to the table. It's, as teachers, we know what it's like when the audience doesn't say anything. And this was so not the case. Every week we had wonderful discussions.
Yeah.
Very rewarding experience, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And today, Shohini was busy and she could not attend the session, but I thank her for Shohini Ghosh for inaugurating our festival, which happened 3 weeks ago. And I'm also grateful to Nikhila, Professor Nikhila H. of FLU, for sponsoring Zoom Pro. Those of us who have been logging in from day one, we know we have been, cut off abruptly, and then we've had to log through the same, and we had this constant instruction, please log in back again through the same link, etc., etc. So all that has been cancelled out thanks to Nikhila's generosity for sponsoring Zoom Pro, which has facilitated continuous discussion. And thank you so much for that. The posters that I have been putting up on Facebook every week to accompany each of the announcements have been made by my son, Sudhir Garimalla. So we thank him for that. And he also made the, if you can recall, the short video for the inaugural session, the red carpet and the champagne. So that was also made by him, and as well as my PPT. So thank you, Sudhir, for that. And of course, this festival would not have been such a huge success had it not been for the participants, your sustained encouragement. You have logged in week and week out. You have commented, you have raised questions, and you have contributed to the energy of the session in a huge way. And we are really, Nikhila and I are deeply indebted to all of you for that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nikhila. Thank you, Neepa. And thank you all the participants. Good
Thank
night.
you, everyone. And some of you even came on Diwali. I'm very grateful for that.
Thanks, Neepa. Thanks,
Thank you.
Geeta. Yeah, thank you all so much. So see you all next week. We'll come back with another film for discussion next Saturday. Thank you and good night.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.